Okay, so this is a bit more towards the realism side. So this is a good, I think, use case or good sort of case study for this. So I'm going to just isolate that. And yeah, usually for character mesh, like I said, there's typically a natural split with clothing out around the neckline. So usually we keep the neck connected to the head, and we will sort of slice it off from the body here. So I'm going to, yeah, just find out where that point is roughly. And I'll use the slice tool to start, because slice will basically keep things together. So that's going to cut. It's a pretty heavy mesh. It's a Dynamesh right now, I believe. Okay. So now I'm going to split that out from the, I guess, yeah, we got the body. So again, I'll solo this. I'm going to hopefully be able to just hide this off. Yeah, for some reason it looks like the top of the head is also maybe a separate group. So I'll Control-Shift click on that, and then we can hold Control-Shift-Alt. By the way, if you're still in the Slice tool, which I am, I'm just going to hit Escape to cancel that. And switch to select rectangle. So Control-Shift-Alt, and then that hides that. I'll go to Split Hidden. And I'll just sort of drag that out into here for now. Sorry, I'll try that one more time. I feel like I lost the head there. Okay. Split hidden. There we go. Yeah, I'll just sort of stick it in with the hair that's up there. Okay. That's better. Okay, so we've got that. Again, I'll get out a solo. Again, nothing is visibly different with the character at this point. So, I'm going to duplicate again. I always keep kind of the Dynamesh version or whatever is the raw version of that isolated. So what I would like to do is basically create a mouth cavity. So you can start, I think in the demo I did on Monday, I opened the jaw immediately, but that can present its own challenges. So my typical workflow has actually been to start with the mouth closed and then figure out how to do the mouth cavity and the open jaw and whatnot, okay? So I'm basically going to polygroup the areas where I want to create those circular loops, essentially. So I'll basically kind of trace out the lip line sort of area in the lips. And some tricks too, I'll sort of talk a bit about that in a minute. Because the masking is fairly crucial, you can kind of Control tap on it to blur and then Control Alt tap to sharpen, and that can give you maybe a crisper, a little bit more accurate line. You can also use lazy mouse if you feel like your brush strokes are a bit wobbly, like mine always are. So I'll kind of create the nasal cavity. So again, Control Alt will subtract from the mask. And I'll hit Control W, so you'll see that creates that. Now usually I want these to be independent as well, so if you do them at once, you can also isolate that single group and say auto group, and then it'll automatically change them into different color-coded groups, okay? We can also turn off the line option as well. That can sometimes help when you're painting this stuff or trying to get a little more accurate. And you don't have to be perfect either on this. Like you can kind of go sloppy and just kind of move the points into position later on too when you project. So projection, I think a lot of people don't quite get what projection does early on with ZBrush. It's really just saying, hey, transfer my details, sculpting, painting, whatever it is I have from one version of the mesh to another. Okay, so that allows you to sort of lose nothing, but then gradually refine, or rather suddenly refine the mesh into something that's more production worthy, or simply better to render and maybe do some look dev and texturing and things like that. So I'm just kind of refining that up a bit. And I'll fill the rest of this in. So I basically make one big polygroup here. And then I'll create the other kind of radiating circular groups around these zones, okay? Control W. And yeah, it looks like there was a split group thing happening up here. So if I hide these other polygroups that I've made, right, I'll just hit Control W. That kind of resets the base group. Again, Control Shift click, and then I'll do another series of, like I said, loops around here. Okay, Control W. Control Shift click again. And then I think I'll just finish with one larger group, the Robin mask, as I often say. Okay, Control W. And then again, Control Shift click on the main here and do at least one other. I usually want to just doing kind of one bigger group around the mouth. Now we could also focus a bit on the ears too. That would be useful. So again, you've got a very kind of detailed or defined shape here. So you might want to simply highlight that. Control W, Control Shift click, isolate, and then get at least the kind of front rim polygrouped. So might be a little tricky in this zone, but again, that Control Alt Tap or Control Tap is very useful, so you can really see kind of where the lines are going or not going. Okay, that's probably okay for now. Control W. Additionally, what you can do is, just to show you, is that you can also put in guides, Z-remesher guides. So these are kind of like little curves. So I can sort of say, okay, I want the loops coming out of the mouth to go this way. Remember that loop I talked about from the middle of the lower eyelid that goes down into the kind of outer third of the lip? You can have that there as well. So then that in combination with polygroups, if I go into Z-remesher, I'll go half, keep groups. This adaptive size basically is the emphasis on, sorry, not adaptive size. I think there's actually an additional setting that I don't have in my custom interface. Under Z-remesher, there's the curve strength. So if you want the curves to have more influence on the actual topology, you can crank that up to 100. But we'll try this out for now. Again, I usually don't do too many ZBrush Z-remesher guides until I'm getting close to the final. By the way, yeah, this might, I'm not sure if this will affect this or not, but we'll see. Yeah, this is working okay. Now, with, like I said, with that smooth groups option on, these details or some of these shapes will start to kind of be erased. So you may want to consider dialing that down once your main shapes are kind of a a little more kind of clean and even and kind of smoothed out, or you can manually smooth them, as I showed in the other video. So I'm at 88,000 going to 44. Okay, so we're getting kind of there. So remember what I said before too, is if your target is 40,000, you can divide that by 10 and work at 10,000. Or you can go ultra low and work at something like 2,500. Okay, so I'm going ultra low in this case. I'm around 2,800, okay? Okay, so I'll keep this now at about the same, or maybe dial in. You can dial in the number as well if you wanted to. In terms of poly count. Again, yeah, I think at this stage I'll undo a couple of steps and turn off the smooth groups, okay? So zero mesh in half. So it'll sort of maintain the shapes a lot better without kind of washing them out and turning them into these flatter circular shapes. So zero mesh in half, and half. By the way, it's good to check your mesh. Sometimes you'll get kind of breakages like this. So again, I recommend going into Z Modeler, and then you can go to something like Stitch, 2 points. That might fix some of the issues there. Or I think in this case, maybe, yeah, I'll stitch there to there. Can't quite see. Yeah, for some reason it's not. I'll try collapse edge. If it's not working, you can always try another kind of alternative. Collapse edge actually works very well in this case. Okay, so I'll zero mesh in half again. So again, you'll start to see sometimes some collapsing of areas, and that's okay. Like, we can still kind of work with this a bit. So again, sometimes my method is to say, okay, if I'm close to my target poly count, let's say here, if I'm okay with 15,000, this might be an okay base to work from. Again, I get a breakdown in circular loops, and the way to check is to go to Z Modeler for me. Hover over an edge and go to insert, make sure and insert single loop. So if you can get a single loop that goes around and doesn't spiral, that's a good sign. It breaks down right about here. You see it kind of shoots off in the mesh in different ways. So yeah, sometimes what I'll do is I'll sort of say, okay, well, I'm going to Control-Shift click on this polygroup, hit Control-Shift-X to expand to that loop, regroup that, and then I'll basically take this and you can extrude this inwards if you wanted to. So I'll go to Z Modeler, Z Modeler. Okay, let's clear that. I'm going to go, sorry, make sure, am I in Z Modeler? Yes. Okay. Hover over a polygon, you can say maybe like extrude, polygroup all, or I'll do maybe an inset. Inset is almost like a flat extrusion. So again, inset, polygroup all, like so. And then I'll just take this polygroup and sort of try to scale it down a bit. Sorry, I'll try that one more time. Yeah, maybe I'll just scale it actually. Yeah, I'll try that one more time. I'm going to just do it a different way. I'm going to mask this and then, again, do my kind of little like move tricks. I'm going to Control Move to extrude it and then basically kind of scale it in a bit. Yes?
Is it possible for you to record this?
Yep. Already doing it. Yes. Okay, so the same thing in here. You see the mouth loops, they're not quite working. So one way I kind of get around this is to isolate this, hit Control-Shift-X, or we can kind of flip this the other way. I'll hide it this way, this way, this way. Okay. And again, I'll center this and mask it, and then I'll Control-Shift-Click off to unhide everything. Control-Click off the model to flip the mask around. And yeah, let's just kind of move it, nudge it a bit, and then scale it in a bit. And then Control, click, and drag back. Again, let me just see if I'm, yeah. Okay, I'll isolate this again. Okay, so mask and then unhide, flip this around. Control, click, and drag in, so that's kind of the basis. It looks weird, right? But it'll become the basis of the mouth cavity eventually. So, yeah, let's take that one more time. So again, I'll isolate this. I'll hit Control, Shift, S to shrink this and basically regroup this. So I can, again, just Control click on this with the move brush or the transpose. Come on, you. There. And then I can Control click and drag one more time. Okay. So you've got, again, one kind of big polygroup here, right? So what I usually do is I'll insert an edge loop, and then, again, I'll try this one more time. It doesn't often work, but polygroup a poly loop. Yeah, sometimes I go in the direction it doesn't work. Yeah, if it doesn't work, it's not a big deal. I'll go to select lasso, isolate that, and yeah, let's isolate the group first, and then I'll hide off the loops. Hit Control W. Then again with Z-Modeler, extrude, polygroup. So you see now, we're basically getting the circular loops that we wanted, right? And if things are a bit asymmetrical, that's not a big deal. We can kind of like resymmetrize. There's a little trick to this too. So if things got a little asymmetrical, which I noticed they did a bit earlier, there's a little feature under deformation called Smart Resim, and you see it'll sort of, or Resim as well can work. Smart Resim will try to symmetrize, or you can do like a mirror and weld. Okay, mirror and weld can often fix any issues as well. Okay, so let's get out of this for a second. So again, I'll take this this kind of interior loop. Okay. I may also just add. I'll do insert multiple loops, interactive elevation. I'll tell it to keep the polygroup. So I'm going to try to add almost like a plump line for the lips there. There we go. By the way, when you're smoothing, sometimes the smooth brush is also like moving very radically. So you can hold Shift and turn down the Z intensity for smoothing. So you can kind of dial things in a bit that way. Right? It can be a little bit more gentle, a little bit easier to work with. So I'm going to just drop in a few more loops here as well. Okay. So what I recommend doing, let's clear the mask. I'm going to basically isolate and hide the mouth cavity, because if you do a project all, it'll create a distortion with spikes and stuff everywhere. Whereas if I go in here, yeah, let me just, I'm going to hide off everything but the new lip groups I have. Let's go like this, this. So usually what I like to do is actually split this off into upper and lower lip groups. So I'll just go to auto groups in this case. Auto group. Again, I'll yeah, hide everything else. But that. Then hit Control W. So now we got kind of like two solid groups. Realize I actually want that loop to be part of the lower lip, so I'm going to fix that right now. Yeah, the reason you want typically an upper lower eyelid, upper lower lip groups is that it's much easier to then kind of get these things to open and close and to fold and things like that. So, oh, what happened here? Added an extra loop. Okay, I'll just take it back out. Okay, so now, like I said, I can kind of focus on just the this upper lip for the time being. We can go to transparency mode, and again, I'll just kind of control click on that, so I can literally just move that lip group up and over and into an approximate position. And let's just smooth that out. We'll do project all. I'll say no to paint right now. I can turn off the color option. And yeah, let's just check the loops in here. So that should be the corner of the mouth, okay? So usually what happens too, there's a kind of a bit of a misnomer with the lips, is that the lips actually kind of, they don't come to a sharp point. The lips actually turn inwards at the corner of the mouth. So I usually kind of twist or turn those vertices inwards in the corners, okay? So I'm kind of just trying to get that twisting action happening. And yeah, I'm not quite catching the whole upper lip shape as well, so I'm going to bring those points down. Again, I want to follow the sort of approximate lip line as well. So project all is your friend in this case. Sometimes what can happen is, yeah, you get weird spikes and stuff from projection. So I will, on occasion, like do this thing where I do what's called the store morph target. So it sort of creates a snapshot of the model in its current state. There, let's just focus on that. Okay. So again, just kind of almost like getting the lip to turn into the interior of the mouth is, I think, fairly useful. Okay, we'll get rid of that for a second. Okay, then we'll work on the lower lip. Do a project all. Again, you can sort of see it getting kind of wild in the corners here, but that's fine for now. And again, I want the lip line. We can go to double-sided as well, just to see this a bit better. So this is kind of sticking way out from the face. If the distance is too far, it will not capture the shape. So we do want to kind of make sure that they're relatively close to each other. And sort of definitely take a look at it from many, many angles. So that way when you see a project all, it should snap to the surface. Now again, you see the spiking. This could be happening because it's trying to reach across to the upper lip or to some other part of the facial anatomy there. So let's solo this. You know, a lot of times too, I'll look at this and sort of evaluate, you know, is there enough loops? I probably need one more loop in here, I think, just for, again, even density. And then I may add one more in and around the lips. I'm not exactly sure there, but I think that looks pretty good. You know, I like to hold shift, let go, and then kind of even this out in terms of density. So we get more even spacing. Now again, if you do project all, you might see spike shooting across, so it's a good kind of habit if you see that to undo. And you can go down into where is it? Sorry, morph. Let me find it. morph target, and store morph. So it basically stores the mesh in its current state here. Ah, you see it happening here. Okay. One of the reasons for this is that if you have other visible subtools, like hair, right? So if I turn off solo and transparency, it's not knowing which surface to project to. So it's projecting to the head, to the other hair pieces, right? So this might be a good use case where I'll say, okay, I'm going to turn off everything else. So I'm going to hold shift, click on the eyeball icon to hide everything else, turn this stuff, just these two heads back on. Let's make sure I'll turn off the body there. So I'll just smooth this stuff out, all this kind of bad spikiness, and then I'll reproject again. So I'll solo so we can sort of see that, and it should get fixed here, project all, and you see that kind of cleans everything up, just tightens it right back up, right? Now I think I've still got some kind of issues in here with this polygroup. I'm not happy with the way it's looking, this kind of inner green one here. So I'll show you a little trick. I'll take this. Actually, let's go in here to ZModeler. ZModeler. It's being a bit odd, ZModeler. Okay, there we go. So I'll take this and go to polygroup. I can actually just say, let me think about that. I will scale this down, I think. Yeah, let's go to scale, polygroup all. Okay, and then I'll just mask it and kind of move it so it's a bit more centered again. Because the topology in here doesn't matter. I could literally delete this too and it wouldn't matter because you're never going to see it. Then I'll go back into insert multiple loops. So again, I'll do this and actually tell it to not keep the existing polygroup but create a new one, but make it one polygroup. So there. So now we've got nice kind of radiating loops there if need be. Again, at a solo. Go to transparency, and I can see, yeah, this area needs to be pulled forward. So I'll just go to a move brush for now. So just get it about in the ballpark, in the approximate range. So again, you want that eyelid edge to sort of fit with your character mesh here. Then if we hit project all, it should snap up fairly good. There's some weirdness from the other cavity back there. That's fine. I'm just going to smooth it out a bit. Okay. Solo. Yeah, this is the spiking I was talking about that's happening. If you take a look here, you might see some little spikes popping through. So if I had that morph target stored, right? Just to show you, I'll isolate this for a second. You see those spikes? Hit B for brush, M for morph, and G is the last kind of keyboard shortcut command in that sequence. You can literally, oh, I don't think I stored it now. Yeah, I'll be able to just brush it back into position. Usually what I'll do too, if I don't have it, I'll just sort of smooth it back into position. That's typically enough to kind of help. And like I said, I'll inflate. I find that just also becomes more organic when you inflate these things together. They look a fair bit nicer as well. So a little bit of smoothing and maybe a little kind of touch-up sculpting, okay? Yeah, I made a little mistake down here too, right, with this. There's another really interesting feature. This is kind of wild, actually. It's a fairly recent feature from 2023 or maybe this version, called the history repeat button. So if you look down here, you see the spikes happen like one of my projections. So I could use that as well, almost like a morph target. So you see this point in the history looks clean, right? So if I hit B for brush, hit H for history, there's history recall. So literally I go to the point where the mesh looks good, hit control, and then go back to the current timeline. oh, not in symmetry, it says. I'll crank the intensity to 100, and I hope that works. Is that working? Maybe it's shift. Do I have to hit shift and then try it? I'm forgetting now. No. Hold on. Well, I used it right. It's not working. So I'm going to show you my alternative method. The hack method here. I'm going to actually, yeah, just basically delete the rows that are screwed up. In this case, I think it has something to do with the open edges. I'm pretty sure. I'll use ZModeler in this case and go to the, if you hover over an edge, go to Move. And I'll usually do Move Auto Radius, Edge Loop Complete. So I'll kind of just pull that back into the position that the old stuff was, and then I can, yeah, I'll just smooth this out a bit. And if you want to, you can probably reintroduce, oops, let me just make sure I'm in symmetry there. Yeah, like I could reintroduce, let's say, new loops, reinsert loops. I'll keep polygroup. I don't need interactive elevation. So I'll just kind of fix it. Smooth elevation, sure. Okay, sorry, I'll just go back to this. By the way, I am having some other weird issues here. Sometimes you get some strangeness, like my regular insert is kind of being a bit odd. So if you notice sometimes your brushes get a bit unwieldy, a good tip, go click on the brush menu, hit reset all brushes. That can sometimes get rid of strangeness that might occur with the brush system in ZBrush. So hopefully my inserts will now work with ZModeler properly. Yeah, see now it's working fine actually. Okay, there we go. All right, so that is basically working, right? And then I can divide this up a bit more. So I'll divide up, and this time I'll maybe introduce or turn on the color project, hit project all. And what's great is it's going to bring back all the sculpting detail plus, right? Plus texture. Okay, and then if there's any issues, it's always good to kind of isolate and then sort of smooth those out and maybe do a little touch-up sculpting if need be. Okay. Get a transparency, go to solo. And of course, too, if you need to kind of, let's say, do some additional painting, I usually just go, this is my custom interface, so I'll go to Paint, and then you can hit C to sample the color, and then kind of flesh out the, let's say, the inner part there of the lip. Okay, just to kind of get that done. Then I'll, again, yeah, let's maybe inflate these, close. Okay, so that's how you can get a fairly clean mesh. One last step or suggestion I'll make is that let's say you're at the low res, right? When you go up in resolution, you see this kind of rounds out, and that's fine. It can look a bit soft and round, but if you wanted to maintain a sharper edge for, let's say, the lip line, usually what I wind up doing is, yeah, I can go down to the low. This is a case where you might want to freeze your mesh, so I'll go to freeze subdivision levels, and then if I go just into the topology, you can use either crease. I find crease is okay, it just doesn't always shade that well, so my preference for that is to actually go into ZModeler and to literally just go into insert loop and have one or two additional loops on either side of those crucial areas that have a bit more of a rigid line. Not necessarily sharp, but okay, so that way if I go to unfreeze here, let's just delete higher for a second. Divide. So that way you get kind of this firmer crease line there, right? So you see a bit more of the lips basically kind of forming, right? That sort of line. And again, what's great is nothing's lost through projection. You're transferring any sculpting detail, any painting detail from one version of the mesh over now to a cleaner version of the mesh. Too, like I do find, you know, yes, we're following anatomy and features, but sometimes if the line work, or let's say these edges are a little bit wobbly, again, I'll hold shift and let go and then kind of polish them up. And you can do a little reproject as well if you want to make sure it's still adhering to the shape, but sometimes the lines get a little wavy, wobbly, okay? Same thing here, like I do want to make sure that the lip line actually follows the character's actual lip shape. Okay, so we do want to maybe, you know, just refine that a bit more and make sure that it flows and follows properly, okay? So in terms of the facial hair, I'll get into that in another demo, okay? We'll talk about eyelids, eyebrows, all that sort of stuff.